Hello and welcome to this demo on Active Directory. So I'll be doing a series of demonstrations on how to do different tasks with Active Directory. Um, Today, the demo that we'll be looking into will be the one on password settings object and just some basic admin tasks with regarding securing your Active Directory environment. So just as an introduction, what I have here is I have three servers here. So I have two domain controllers and I have one member server all connected to the same switch. So what we'll be doing right now is part of a series of Active Directory demonstrations. And this is on securing Active Directory domain services. First, task that we'll be doing today, security policies. So that'll be configuring security policies, and we'll be achieving this using group policy objects and password settings objects, PSOs. And so let's get right to this. So first of all, just to show you a basic introduction of what we're looking to achieve also. I've got here, bring that to the screen here, I've got here just as a show of what we're looking to configure. So we're looking in this environment to configure password settings, limitations or security for users within this environment. And what we're looking to achieve is to have different settings for general users within the environment, and then different settings for IT and administrators. So this is something that in the past, like in Active Directory in Windows Server 2003, I think even in 2008, this is something that wasn't possible because you can only have one password policy, and that applies to the entire domain. So your administrators and any other department or group are stuck with using the same configuration. But now, at least in 2012 out to, we have password settings objects that we can configure. And what this can allow us to do is have separate password policies or separate security and password policies for users in different departments, and we can enforce that. So that's what we're looking to achieve. Let's get right into it. So first of all, I'll go on learn DC1, and yeah, let's just configure a password setting for all users. So we'll do this the same way that we've always done it, which will be through group policy. And what I'll do is I'll use the default domain policy for this configuration. So under configure, under computer configuration, under policies, under Windows settings, and under security settings, under that's where we'll find the account policies. Yeah, so let's expand security settings. And there we go, account policies. So the very first one that we'll do is we'll configure the password policies. And this allows us to configure things like the password history that's remembered by Active Directory. So because Active Directory can use this history for other policies which we see in the future. For example, it can stop you reusing passwords. So just a quick explanation of this. It says this security setting determines the number of unique new passwords that have to be associated with the user account before an old password can be reused. The value must be between 0 and 24. So in other words, whatever I configure here, if a user has a password set to password 1, they have to use subsequent passwords have to be unique. So not until they have 24 other passwords can they reuse password 1 again. So this is just a way of making sure that users are not reusing passwords over and over again. Because there's like different, I know there are different arguments regarding this, with some people saying the concept of time-based security, that you can compromise any security measure provided you have enough time to do it. But then there's another school of thought that says if you make this too strict, you can actually end up achieving the opposite of what you want to achieve. Because if you have people having to remember, 24 unique passwords before they can go back to using one password, sometimes people are just not like that. So what will happen is people start doing things like writing passwords down, which actually makes your environment less secure and which is achieving the opposite of exactly what you want to achieve. Some people will say a better way would be to invest in a security team that's good at cracking passwords in your environment and then contacting users whose passwords have been compromised to set more strong passwords. But that's just something that's up for debate. So in line with our objective for this, so we'll set the password history for 10, just 10 passwords to be remembered. So I'll go ahead and change this, set this to 10. And going down, the next one says maximum password age. And this says the security settings determine, this security setting determines the period of time in days that the password can be used before the system requires the user to change it. You can set passwords to expire after a number of days. So in other words, after this amount of days that you set here, after it expires, the user will have to reset their password. And many people have seen that in your corporate environment where you come in one morning, you try to log in, it tells you your password has expired, you have to change it. So basically this is the expiry date. So if I set a password after 60 days, the password will expire. So in line with our policy again for all users, so if I bring that up again, for all users, maximum password is just 60 days. So here is where you see that there's a difference in what we want to configure for administrators, but we'll see how we did that one afterwards. Okay, so let's apply that and let's okay to that. Okay, so the next one is the minimum password age. What this one means is says this security setting determines the period of time that the password must be used before the user can change it. So because what could happen is if I go and say set the password to a user sets the password to password 1, but what they actually want to set the password to is set it to password 20. So what they could do is just to bypass the password history that I've enforced, which is 10. They just keep setting different password and just keep resetting them till they actually are able to use the password that they want to use, or maybe to reuse that. So what this one will say is once you set the password, you can't change it immediately. You have to wait for a minimum of this number of days before you can change it. So in this case, we'll leave this set to 1 day. So if a user sets their password, they have to wait for 1 day before they're allowed to change it. In other words, which means they'll probably, if they want to get to 10 password, they have to wait for a minimum of 10 days to get back to the password that they want. Again, there's different school of thought about this. Many people saying this can actually be counterproductive, but in case this is something you want to do, well, this is how to do it. Okay, minimum password length. This is self-explanatory. This is the minimum amount of characters that must be in your password. And then the password complexity requirement. What this simply means, let's read this out. It says, the security setting determines whether password must meet complexity requirement. If this policy is enabled, password must meet the following minimum requirements. It must not contain the user's account name or parts of the user's full name. it must be at least 6 characters. We've set it to be minimum of 8 characters. Must contain characters from 3 of the following categories: English uppercase characters, English lowercase characters, base 10 digits, and non-alphabetic characters. So complexity just simply means uppercase, lowercase, digits, and just complex characters, and non-alphabetic. Okay, so for this one, we can only either enable or disable it. And what we'll do is in line with what we set out to do. Again, if I bring that up, what we'll do is we'll leave this enabled. So password must meet complexity requirement. Yeah, we want that. So let's move forward. Say store password using reversible encryption. Okay. So if I click OK to that. And so this one, there's a whole lot of lessons that we'll probably have to go through regarding this one. But as this is a demo, um, we usually have hangouts from time to time, and in some of our hangout, I think we've discussed this, or if not, we'll be discussing this. So that'll probably be a much better forum for that. So what this means is Active Directory stores your passwords or the password of the identities, the user or computer. Do you want it to store this password with reversible encryption so that can be easily reversed? Um, well, this is kind of like a security risk if it's stored in reversible encryption, because what that means, if someone is able to compromise one of our domain controllers, maybe in one of our insecure sites, or for whatever reason they're able to compromise that, and they have a copy of our Active Directory database, the ntds.dit file, what this could mean is they could potentially be able to reverse the hashes of the password and reverse them um, to get what the original password is, what the plain text of the password is. So what we'll do is we want this set to disabled, because enabling this would be a security risk in our environment. Okay, so let's move on. Account lockout policy is the next one. So account lockout and duration. So what do we want to do this? So this means if a user enters their password an amount of time, they're going to be locked out. That's set by this account policy, account lockout threshold, which means how many times are you allowed to enter your password incorrectly before you're locked out. And what this one is defining is defining how long you're locked out for before your account is unlocked. So what we're going to do is we're going to define this policy in this case. We're going to say you're going to be locked out for 60 minutes. If you enter the wrong password, now you see what happens there is once I click OK to this, it's going to come up and say, okay, if you're going to be locking out account for certain durations, then you must have account lockout thresholds and this other policy. So I'll go ahead and click OK to this and then set the account lockout threshold. I think we'll leave this at 5. That's in line with our policies. Yep, 5 minutes. So, but we set account lockout counter after 20 minutes. So what does that mean? So that's the only one I'll change. We set account lockout counter. So if you're locked out for 60 minutes, eventually it has to reset the counter. So let's say you've entered an incorrect password. We said it's set to a minimum of 5 incorrect attempts. So if you've entered the first one, the second one, the third one, it's keeping a count of that. But then if you entered, like, let's say the fourth one, but you've not entered the fifth one, and the fifth incorrect login, your account will still not be locked. But what happens is after 30 minutes, it resets the account, it goes back to 0. And then basically if you keep trying different passwords again, it's going to start increasing the counter. So we'll set this one in line to what we want. We'll set this to 20 minutes and we'll click OK to that. Okay, so let's make some progress now. So now we've set this, which is good. And what this policy what will happen with this policy is this will apply to every user in this environment. And the reason for that is because the policy that we've put this configuration in is linked to the domain, and that's like the whole concept of LSD. So you're linking it to the domain. Every object under the domain are going to inherit the settings. But let's say we want a different set of policies for maybe people in IT, for example. Using this method, we can't, because we can only have these security policies. We can only have one of them one object that defines these settings in our entire environment. So we can only have one object. But now there's a different way that we can use this, which is using something called password settings object, which is what we'll go ahead to configure now. So let's go ahead and bring up the Active Directory Administrative Center. This is like one of those new consoles that Microsoft introduced with Windows Server 2012. And it's kind of like a bridge between different consoles. Like it can do stuff that you can get from that you can do with Active Directory users and computers, but it can do some more than that. Okay, there we go. So it's opened up. Let's go on the header to local here, and then on the system here, I'll find a container called password settings container. There we go. So let's expand this. And actually, let me bring it back to directory users and computers also. It's this. Okay. Let's view the advanced features so we can see. So what I'm doing is going on the systems and going on the password settings container. So this is the container that we're going to be creating a password settings object. Password settings setting object are also just Active Directory objects, but within them are policies that we can now apply to different groups in our environment. So we can apply a different password settings for people in this group and for people in the other group. So let's go ahead and configure one for our IT administrators. So what I'll do is under this one, I'll go new password settings, and I'll just call this one editor administrators password settings. Precedence. What it means by precedence is I can have multiple, so going through this method, I can have multiple password settings applying to the same group. So the one that will take effect is the one that has the lowest number of precedence. So it says password settings with a lower precedence number, we overwrite one with a higher number. So if I have two policies that are set to affect one group, so and if those two policies have conflicting configurations, only one of them will eventually apply, definitely. So the one that will apply is the one with the lowest number. So this is where you configure what you want the precedence number, and this is defined by the administrator. So let's just set this to 10, and let's now go through the rest of our configuration. So it's kind of like similar to what we're configuring for the users, only they want to make this a bit more secure. So we'll have different configurations, like it should still be 10 password history, but the maximum password age this time will be 30 days. We want them to reset their password after every 30 days. So let's set the minimum password length characters. What's it that we want to configure for password length characters? It's 10 characters. So let's set this to 10 characters. Password history, number of passwords remembered. I think we're setting this one to 10 also. So again, bringing up, yep, so we're setting that to 10 also. And first minimum password age, user cannot change their password within this amount of time. So what are we setting that to? It's also to 1 day, same as the one for users. But the maximum password age this time around, we're setting this to 30. We set 6 for the general user population, but this we're setting 30. Going forward a bit, so password must meet complexity requirement is true. Store password using reversible encryption is false. So let's also ensure that store password using reversible encryption is unchecked, so that's good. Password must meet complexity requirement is enabled, so that's true. So enforce account lockout policies. I think we have something here. So it says account lockout duration here is 1 hour. Account logout threshold is after 3 invalid attempts. So let's set that first of all. Number of failed logon attempts allowed. We're going to set that to 3. But what we want in this case is, in the case of our general user, we set it to we set this number to 5, and then after 1 hour it's going to unlock the account. Where in this case, if it locks you as an administrator, another administrator will have to unlock your account. So we'll just set this to until an administrator manually unlocks the account. And now the interesting part of applying this, so you can see this just like other objects in Active Directory where we have protect, excuse me, where we said protect from accidental deletion. Okay. So where we have to apply this to security groups in our environment. So I want to apply this to domain administrators and people who are in the IT security group. Okay, so I go IT and check names. Okay, hold on. I can't see anything coming up here, and I'll show you the reason why shortly. So let's make this much bigger. If I get AD group, sorry, it's wrong. Yeah, definitely get an error message to that. So keyboard. Yeah, there we go. So we have this AD group IT. So the group scope is universal. So I can't use this cannot apply to universal to a group that has a scope of universal. So what I need to do is change the scope of this group from universal to global. And that's again another lesson for. So if I set AD group IT, now set the group scope to global. So if I get it again, now the group scope should be global. So now if I go back and check name again, yeah, now we can find IT. And then I'll add domain admins to that. And here we go. So now we have this password setting object applying to these two group members, or sorry, these two groups within our environment. And then what I'll just do now is I'll go ahead and click OK, in which case this will apply. Yep. So let's move a bit further. So I'll go back here and just confirm that that has indeed applied to certain users. So I'll bring up some users in IT. So I have this user. I can view resultant password settings for this user. So it says user does not have resultant fine-grained policy settings. In other words, this user is not either in the IT group or in the domain admins group, and the only policy that's applying to this user is the one that we've configured to apply to the entire domain. So they don't have any fine-grained policy applying to any group that that user is a member of. So let's go ahead and try another user that we know is in IT. Let's bring Brad and then we view. Yep, and here we go. We click on Brad and we say, let's view the resultant password settings for Brad. And then it showed us the Adatum administrator's password setting. So there you go. So that's the way to use password settings object to configure separate password policies for different groups of identities or entities in your Active Directory environment. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration, and I'll see you in the next demonstration or in a hangout later. Bye for now.